Hi everyone. So I watched an interview the weekend between the excellent Lee Camp and Ray McGovern. Ray McGovern, for those of you who don't know, is the founder of the group Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, or VIPS for short. This is the group that debunked the Iraq has WMDs lie back in the early 90s. And they also correctly said in 2013 in an open letter to Barack Obama that the gas attack in Syria that supposedly Assad had perpetrated was actually a false flag by the rebels on themselves. So he's got form for being right, or his group has got form for being right. Now, he said something very, very interesting in that interview with Lee Camp. Let's take a look at what he said.
You have to realize that these corporations do own things, and of course the CIA is very much in it because they profit from this as well. And I hearken back to Bill Casey, who was director when I was still on active duty there, so at the CIA. First thing he said at the first staff meeting at the White House, and I know this because my friend was there, Barbara Honegger is her name, he said, you know, when we succeed in getting the entire American people to believe what we tell them to believe, we will have succeeded in our objective. So this packaging of the truth, it was started and got on steroids then. Now it's off the charts.
Now, when I heard that, I thought that's astounding. Is it true? That's my first thought, really. Is it true? So I did some investigating, and sure enough, Barbara Honegger is the source of it. She said this: I am the source for this quote, which was indeed said by CIA Director Bill Casey at an early February 1981 meeting of the newly elected President Reagan with his new cabinet secretaries to report to him on what they had learned about their agencies in the first couple of weeks of the administration. The meeting was in the Roosevelt Room in the West Wing of the White House, not far from the Cabinet Room. I was present at the meeting as assistant to the chief domestic policy advisor to the president. Casey first told Reagan that he had been astonished to discover that over 80% of the intelligence the analysis side of the CIA produced was based upon open public sources like newspapers and magazines. As he did to all the other secretaries of their departments and agencies, Reagan asked what he saw as his goal as director for the CIA, to which Casey replied with this quote: "We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false." That's exactly what he said. Honegger goes on to say, I recorded Casey's comment in my notes of the meeting as he said it. Shortly thereafter, I told the senior White House correspondent Sarah McClendon, who was a close friend and colleague, who in turn made it public. So this is what Bill Casey said to Ronald Reagan in 1981. What he said was he was going to set up a misinformation campaign. And the fact is, he was already doing it. In 1981, Bill Casey was actually under investigation for several things, but chief of which was an allegation that he had given the green light to an operation in Libya to overthrow Gaddafi through a disinformation campaign. Now, this disinformation campaign was reported by a guy called Jack Anderson, who is a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. And he actually says in this article from September of 1981, under the imaginative Casey, the CIA is busily creating rumours connecting Gaddafi to the slave trade in Mauritania. I find it deeply ironic that they were trying to get rid of Gaddafi back in 1981 by spreading rumours that he was involved in the slave trade. They finally get rid of Gaddafi in 2011, and what happens? The slave trade comes back. I have a deep sense of irony and sadness that that has happened. So what Ray McGovern was alluding to in that interview with Lee Camp was that the CIA have been doing this, spreading disinformation through the media and infiltrating the media and controlling what the people and the citizens of America actually, what information they get. They've been doing it for decades. And in those decades, they've only got better at it. Now it's much better than it ever was back in 1981. And they were doing it on a large scale back then. So what is the scale now? And if you combine that with the fact that so much money is made in the military-industrial complex and the people who profit from it, is it any wonder that the only time that President Trump has actually got any credit for anything across the board including the lefty media on MSNBC, is it any wonder that MSNBC bring out Brian Williams to say this when Trump bombs that runway in Syria back in 2017?
We see these beautiful pictures at night from the decks of these two U.S. Navy vessels in the eastern Mediterranean. I am tempted to quote the great Leonard Cohen, "I'm guided by the beauty of our weapons." And they are beautiful pictures of fearsome armaments making what is for them a brief flight over to this airfield.
I hate seeing that, really do. Because that's manufacturing consent. That's manufacturing the public's consent for whatever it is that the US government want to do. And it's happening today, and it's happening every day in the mainstream media, because they're not talking about these VIPS findings about the DNC hack. They have looked at the data, they have looked at the metadata from the files that were stolen during that so-called hack, and they have said, this wasn't a hack, it was a leak. This is what VIPS have come out and said. They've got a huge track record of getting things right, and they've said, this is the evidence that you need. And so far, I've seen nothing to dispel that. So, why is it that CNN, MSNBC, New York Times, Washington Post, the Young Turks, you name it, why is it that all these outlets are not talking about the Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity findings? Why aren't they talking about that? Because if they're not talking about it, if they're not talking about VIPS and Ray McGovern and Bill Binney, if they're not even looking at it at all and informing the public, they're paid not to. It's in their interest not to. Because if they were doing their job, if they were reporting, they would report on it. That's simple. That makes sense. You would have to report on something, which is what independent media does. Everybody in independent media is talking about VIPS when it comes to Russia. Everybody. Online, you've got the Real News. They're talking about it constantly. Independent journalists like Kaji Johnson and Secular Talk and Humanist Report and the Rational National, Jimmy Dore, everybody is talking about VIPS. Everybody says, listen, it's not a hack, it's a leak. Look at VIPS. So if the independent sources are pointing you in a direction of evidence that hasn't been dispelled, and evidence that strongly suggests that the DNC wasn't hacked, which is where this Russia story all started and all originated from, if they're talking about it and the mainstream media aren't, why not? Why not? Is it because of infiltration by the CIA? Is it because of money? Is it because they get advertising or investment from places and companies and people that actually make money from the military-industrial complex? Or is it because they're just stupid and they're useful idiots? If you ask me, it's probably all of the above. But it certainly isn't that they're doing good journalism. That's for sure. It's 100%. Because if they were doing good journalism, they would be talking about VIPS. So if you're getting your information from any of these outlets, and I include the Young Turks in this, from any outlet that isn't talking about VIPS, you're not getting the full story. You're getting manufactured consent. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll leave any links to any information below. Please hit subscribe, please hit the bell, and if you are a Patreon, thank you very, very much. I can't do this going forward full time if I don't have your support, and it means the world to me, and I won't let you down. Thanks very much. Until next time, peace.